Okay, disclaimer number one. I'm Ed Ward. I have allergies 365 days a year, 24 hours a day. So you hear me sniffling? I'm not a Coke addict. I've got allergies, all right? I've been a guide, Alaska 16 years, Kamchatka 4 seasons. I don't know how many years, winter steelhead on the Skagit, a few seasons on the Grand Ron. Also designed lines for OPST. This is Dave Pinchkowski. He's from Milwaukee. Supreme Midwestern steelheader, Spey caster. Doesn't say much. He's going to be doing, I have trouble, if you've never done presentations in front of people before, you're always, at least I am, I'm always nervous, no matter how many times I've been doing, for 20 years, but I don't do very many. I do a couple a year. Always nervous, always forgetting stuff. So that stuff never changes. But the main thing I want to get there is just to show you how much casting depends on timing or tempo. Every time we come to one of these, we go out the evening before. We were here last night casting, just blasting them out. And then today we get here just before this, and we're doing all right, but not like we want to be doing. But just to let you know, it happens to everybody. You don't expect perfect casting, at least we don't on these things. So the other thing is, for this first part, he's going to be doing the casting so that I can point out some differences in the casting styles here. And the first thing we're going to do, you want to step out there, Dave? Is in Spey type casting. For the longest time, there were two anchors. And everybody know what an anchor is? It's that part of the cast where you set the line back into the water or skip it on the water. That allows you to change the direction of the energy of your cast. That's what makes a Spey cast. And the first one is called touch and go or kiss and go. It's literally self-descriptive. You pick up the line, it skips off the water, and then you make your forward cast. The two casts most well known for that, especially well known, is a single Spey and the snake or spiral roll. And the wild do single Spey. He's going to lift, he's going to skip, and then he's going to cast. Okay, lift, skip, cast. Spiral, snake roll, whatever that thing is. There's your skip, there's your cast. The main point being that that anchor is very brief, probably measured in slightly less than a second. And if you let that line settle on the water during the anchor, your cast is dead. Do a single Spey, but stop on the anchor. And now cast. It goes, but it doesn't go the way it's supposed to, right? The second type of anchor is what we call, or what was called the waterborne anchor. Once again, very descriptive. It describes that the line has gotten a lot of traction on the water. Okay, it's waterborne. In other words, you're picking the line up from the water to make the cast. So that would be the double Spey. He picks up, sets the line on the water. The line gets a pretty good grip on the water there, all right? It's more than a second. Now, those were the two that were from the original Spey casting. And then we named a third. We called it sustained anchor casting. And I'm going to tell you why. Prior to Skagit casting, they had waterborne casting, but they were not trying to get lots of tension on the line. The lots of tension on the line factor was just a consequence of what they were doing. You understand what I'm saying? They didn't do it, they weren't looking for it. We in Skagit casting are literally looking to put as much tension on that line as we possibly can. See Spey. He's going to set that line, almost the entire line in the water. And just for your information, the sea Spey and snap casts, which are the family of casts, they work the same way. All that changes is the shape that you draw in the air. Those casts were not around that we know of. In North America, at least, in the beginning in North America, we learned from the traditional guys, there was a double Spey and there was a single Spey. There was no sea Spey, there was no snap sea. That cast, John Farrar, a steelhead guide in Washington, was at a fly show, I think in Denver, one of the biggest ones, saw somebody else, a saltwater guide, I think it was, giving a demonstration on single-handed casting. And at the end of the demonstration, the guy would take the rod and snap it like this and then catch the fly. The fly would come right back to him and he'd catch it in his hand, right? So John Farrar saw this and a light went on in his head. He started playing around with it on the river, and then he figured out that if you did the shape, you could actually make it into a Spey type of cast. And the next time he saw Deck Hogan, who's, I'm sure everybody here has heard of Deck Hogan, Deck saw it, and then Deck took it and refined it even more, and that's how the Sea Spey came to be. And I would suggest, if you want to hear the real details on that story, listen to Wet Fly. It's the Wet Fly Swing podcast, and Deck Hogan just did a podcast on it, I think it was about 2 months ago, and he describes that little deal. He describes his version of the evolution of Skagit casting. And I may go into it today, I don't know, we'll see what happens. But I should say that where you're at in life, people's perspectives are slightly different. So wherever you're at in life, what position you are physically at certain times determines what you know, right? So not everybody has the same story, because if you ever hear my side and then hear Deck's side of how Skagit casting evolved, they're very similar but not exactly the same. It's not that either one of us is wrong or whatever. It's just different perspectives. So anyway, getting past that. So the next thing that happened, this is actually kind of a mini story of Skagit evolution too. So then we had the single Spey, the double Spey, and the Sea Spey. Then the next cast to come along was a cast called the Perry Poke. And the Perry Poke, I'm not going to get in the story. A friend of mine, Steve Cruz, showed it to me. Steve Cruz saw it from a friend of his, Carl Perry. That's who it's named after. And then I kind of took it out and worked on it a bit and kept using it when a lot of other people were making fun of it. And I just stuck with it, and lo and behold, it's become one of the most powerful casts in the Skagit casting genre. So now we have the single Spey, the double Spey, and somewhere in there the spiral single came along, but that's not a Skagit cast. But let's say single Spey, spiral for the touch and goes, double Spey, Sea Spey, Perry Poke. So what gradually happened, without anyone consciously thinking about this, is that us guys, or people on the Skagit that were steelheaders, most of us just naturally gravitated towards making those sustained anchor casts our main cast. And like I said, it wasn't a conscious effort at first. It just kind of happened. We started designing our lines to work the best with sustained anchor casts, and our casting technique to work best with sustained anchor casts. That's not to say you cannot touch and go with our stuff. You can, but your most efficient, best performing casts on our systems are going to come with these sustained anchor casts. The reason we started to develop sustained anchor casts, unlike the Clearwater or the Thompson, where you're fishing in the fall and for the most part the river's low and you got these big bars and you have lots of room in the back of you, you can do very long casts with whatever line you want with big D-loops. 70% of the time for winter steelhead on the Skagit River, the river's here. So you're going to wade down those willows this deep. Whoops. You're going to wade down those willows backed up almost right to them. So distance, long distance, was not a concern for us. A concern for us was being able, okay, and when that happens, how they get, oh, I see, it fell through my shirt. When that happens, when the rivers are in that state, up in the trees, you only have about 2 feet of visibility. You're backed up into the trees. The steelhead are not 80 feet out in the river. They're 60 feet on in. So that's what we focused on. Number one, we need to get in tight to the willows. We need to get about 60, 70 feet out. Third thing, dirty water. We need to cast big flies. And those flies need to get down fast because you have a short drift at 60 feet. When you cast 100 feet, that line and fly is out there for a long, long time. Gives you a long, if you need to sink a fly, you have a long, long time to sink a fly. You make a 60-foot cast straight across in fast water. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Your swing's done. You need to sink your fly in that short swing. So what do you need for that? Lead-eye flies, cone heads, all that stuff. You can cast it with touch and go casting if you use a big enough rod. But the other thing about our winter fishing is, I have something going on with my ear. When you have high water, not only are you backed up in the willows, but on the high banks, you're backed up under the cedar trees. A 15, 16-foot rod, you're raking the branches right off the trees. So our favorite rods became 13 foot. 13, 13 and a half was the absolute favorite. Going up on tributaries like the Sauk, we love 12 and a half. So we need 70-foot casting capabilities, big flies. And then one more part to the formula was the mow tips. A long 15-foot, 20-foot sink tip, you cast it out on an unweighted fly. You know what, it's safer for you to just hold on that for me. You cast it out on an unweighted fly on a sink tip. And if you ever want to prove this to yourself, tie a big, bushy orange marabou fly on, leave it dry and cast it out there and watch what happens. Line hits, fly, you see your line go down, your line go down, you cast out here actually. Line go down, line go down. Finally, at about a 45-degree angle, it finally pulls your marabou fly into the water. Now, you've got only this much effective swing. You've wasted all this out here. How do you effectively fish fast sinking flies out here? Ultra heavy material, T14, but in short lengths. Think of it's like fishing a bobber. Your floating portion is almost like a bobber. That short T14 sink tip, whether it's 5, 7.5, 10, or 12, it sinks so fast. It's equivalent to lead core. You cast it out there, and then what you want to do is have a weighted fly. The fly should be weighted to about the equivalent sink rate of that sink tip. So you put it on there, and what happens with that heavy T14, you cast out, you pull back, and then let it drop in. That tip just goes, and that fly goes. Does it get down 20 feet? No, it gets down about 3.5, 4 feet. If you can get down 3.5, 4 feet, you're in 6 feet of water. An active steelhead, it doesn't have to be that active. This is 6 feet of water, you get down 3.5, and you consider that active steelhead don't lay on the bottom. They lay about this high off the bottom. Look how close you are to that fish. All he has to do, he's got the fly. So that's the theory of the Skagit, and that's why we developed these lines. So let's go over the casts that are just the Skagit casts. Let's start with the sea Spey.
You want to do that?
Yeah, I'll do it.
You're better at it.
Okay. So the first thing I want to tell you, one thing when I do my presentations, I always got so many thoughts in my head, I kind of go all over and go on tangents. Here's a tangent for you. If you want to ruin your day of casting, when you get out on the river, what you should do is pull your head off and pull a bunch of running line off and make a cast. You just told yourself in your head, I'm making a long cast. I'm making a long cast right off the bat, so what am I going to do? Bam, I'm going to hit it hard as I can. Well, that's not what casting is about, right? Casting is about timing and mechanics, not about physical power. So, when you get out on the river, at least this is what I do. I go out, I start with about half the line, and what you should do anyways in winter steelheading, because in winter steelheading you step into the head of the run and the good water's right there. And then as you work down, it works further out. So on a lot of steelhead runs in the wintertime, Peninsula, Skagit, Skykomish, Stillaguamish, you're going to step into this much water, knee deep. If you go any deeper, you're too far out. You're going to take your rod, you're going to go like this, you go like this, and you go like that. And you're going to be fishing steelhead because that's where the seam starts at the top of the run. Then you're going to strip out a couple more feet of line. And you're going to make another cast, just 2 or 3 feet longer, right? Then another 2 or 3 feet of line. And then you're now working yourself into a casting tempo, and the correct one. You're starting as light power as possible, gradually increasing power. Your mind adjusts perfectly, all right? So I'm going to strip out a little more line. And you can see how slow. You have to move slow to make a short cast. And you're supposed to move slow to make a long cast. Once again, if you start to try to jack a bunch of line, you're going to think two things. I got to put a lot of power into it. I got to put a lot of speed into it. You're going to defeat yourself. I guarantee you. You're going to break the casting. So start out short. And so I'm going to cheat a little bit here. So what I want to do is go into the sea spey. This is sea spey. You can see I set the line down, almost the entire line down on the water. And I'm going to move out a little bit. In every sustained anchor cast has an upstream version and a downstream version. And for the sea spey, the upstream version, this cast, I was going to tell you why the sea spey and Perry poke helped develop the whole Skagit casting evolution thing was because prior to that, the only cast we had for upstream was a single spey, which is touch and go. So that means you'd use a double spey using waterborne casting techniques, but if the wind was blowing upstream, you had to do a single spey, you had to do touch and go. The sea spey finally gave us an upstream cast where we could do this. Stop, then go. Which matched our double spey for when the wind blew downstream. We'd come here, set the line on the water, come around, make the cast. Both of those sustained anchor cast. Look at how, like I said, watch the whole line. Basically, the majority of the line gets set onto the water, and it gets set onto the water for a sustained amount of time, more than a second. And when you learn this, you should go 1001, 1002, then cast. Major mistake in learning Skagit casting is going too fast. People want to do this. They want to go. It doesn't have it takes a full second for water tension to grab that line. The water tension grabbing that line, you pulling against it, it gives you the tension to load the rod. If you immediately come out of the water, you've lost about half of your tension, so you've lost literally half of your rod load, half of your casting power. So stop, then go. So there's the sea. And at first, this is what we had. This was the basic casting that we had for casting big, heavy flies, heavy sink tip lines, and like I said, our bellies grew shorter and fatter so that we could cast bigger and heavier flies, right? So our two main casts were double spey, up, stop, then go, or sea spey, stop, then go. And then the sea spey started to get morphed into, I might as well go into this, and become things like the snap T. So the C is a big C. You see this? Actually, it's a reverse C in this case. Or sometimes that big C, you can't do it for, let's say you have a log or something over here. So you're going to do this. So the sea spey is one of the coolest casts because you can vary it so much. There are also combination casts, and like I said, I'm not going to explain when to use them. You'll just be out on the river sometime, you go, I need to do this. It's called, I can't remember. Well, literally, it's a pickup of a double spey into a poke, and then that is an extremely powerful cast because it gets everything lined up. Before you make the cast, you've got the line already lined up in the direction it needs to go. It takes an extra move, But if you're having trouble in the wind, or you're having a really big fly, or whatever, it's worth it to make that extra move to do this cast, because it frickin' works like you wouldn't believe. And if I cuss, I apologize, because I'm an ex-sailor, so it's kind of hard for me to not cuss sometimes. Anyway, so it's like you're going into a double spey, stop, come around like you're going to do a double, but then just drop it in the water. Now you've got the line lined up with your target, kick back, make a cast. Can you hear how that's compared to all the other casts? It is extremely powerful. A lot of people don't like it. They say it looks ugly. They don't like the extra move. I'm interested in results out here. I'm not interested in people's opinions on what they think my casting looks like. So, I'll do it one more time. Up, like you're going in a double spey. Stop, come back around. Instead of casting, just drop it in the water, then come back. And it wouldn't crumble like, I'm just kind of showing off, trying to show how powerful that's it. So it's actually going out more energy than needed for the cast going and then jerking back. So that's why it kind of looks like that. So now, we'll tell you what Skagit casting, sustained anchor. Now, within almost every casting style, there are like little personal styles. And you can Skagit, sustained anchor cast, Skagit cast. You can do it linear, which I really can't do linear. I train myself too much. But linear is literally, you come back, let's say you're doing a double spey. You come around here, stop, and then go forward, all right? I do what's called a continuous motion, continuous load. Very subtle difference, but the difference, and you're not going to be able to see it. There's people who don't even believe it happens, all right? But they're just not, they're whatever. Anyway, the difference is linear would be coming back, stop, going forward. That's just like single-handed overhead casting. Back, stop, forward. Continuous motion is swinging out wide, then coming over the top for the forward cast. In other words, your backstroke is in a completely different plane than your forward stroke. And for people that can't understand it, I don't understand it because there's a single-handed version. It's called the Belgian cast. On a Belgian cast, you swing the rod out, overhead cast, but instead of coming back, stop, going forward, you swing it out here, and then while the line's going back to straighten out, you just rotate or drift the rod into an inside plane, more overhead, and go over the top. It's the same thing. Now, it's hard to catch it. I'm going to exaggerate a little bit. I guess the, let's the double spey. On the double spey, you'll see me push the rod out, come way out here, and then over the top right there. Can you see? That's almost a circular motion. It's not a back stop forward, okay? And it starts with, and this is probably one of the parts that's super counterintuitive. If you're going to learn this, we don't just bring the rod around like this. See how close that line was to me? We start the absolute first motion every time out, away from you, all right? So here it is. I'm going to exaggerate it. I'm going to push the rod away from me. See how that forms? And you see how much shorter the D-loop is too? Because I've gained all the tension out here, not back here, all right? Now, the thing is, when you're doing this, you can't accelerate into the D-loop. If you do, you blow your anchor every time. It's an instant start, but then maintain one speed all the way around. Once you feel that rod bend or load, once you feel tension on the line, that's the speed you maintain around. If you accelerate into the D-loop, you'll blow your anchor because this slow outward casting is all about tension. Once you form tension from the line, through the line to the fly, you've got everything you need to make the cast. All you got to do is go forward, right? We get our tension through that big outward circular motion. We don't get it by jacking the line back with power, waiting for it to straighten out, and then come forward. Once again, double spey, it's it should be visible. You should be able to see this. I'm bringing line in here. Then I'm going to push out. You see that big motion? And then the forward casting stroke is on an inside plane. The back stroke is in a plane here. The forward stroke is in a plane here. They have to be connected. In order for that connection to be made, there's motion there. There's no stop. All right? There's tension. Tension may not be heavy through it all. It actually lightens up, but you never lose tension. The best way I can describe it is when you're overhead casting, you know how you cast back? You're waiting for the line straight up, and you feel an emptiness for a second. That's the unload, right? You don't feel, if you do this correctly, you do not feel that. You will feel the rod feels heavy all the way around, all right? So let's go one more time. Once again, I'm exaggerating. I'm going to push out. The casting stroke, since I have tensioned the whole, by the time I get to here, if you watch the fly goes, and then it pulls into a 180 direction from your target. When you see that happens, it means you're fully tensioned, forward cast. But forward cast is not, if you do that, you're going to blow the anchor. You're fully tensioned. Think of the forward casting stroke not as a casting stroke, but as a straight line path towards the target to straighten your line out to the target, okay? Like shooting an arrow to the target. Here we go. So watch this part. You're going to see that I don't go, it's all just a long extension. Stop, go, here we go. Around. No abrupt stop. You don't see me going, right? Just, okay? It's more like 10 o'clock to 2 o'clock, and not 12, not 11 to 1. It's 10 to 2, maybe even greater than that. So I'm going to show you one other thing that kind of separates the whole Skagit cast sustained anchor, is that if I have wind, I can actually continue to cast. Let's say the wind's blowing upstream, probably up to about 20 miles an hour. I can continue to cast off this side if I had to. Let's say there's a giant spruce branch hanging out up here. So I'm forced to cast off the downstream side. I better not say 20 because some of you guys will end up hooking yourself. Let's say 12 mile an hour wind, all right? What you do on our casting is you can lower this whole process, which I'm not going to say it's impossible to do with touch and go, but it's probably pretty darn difficult, all right? Watch what I do. Watch how low I'm going to bring the rod tip during the sweep. I can beat the wind up to a certain pretty good wind doing that by keeping it low to the water. People that say there's no difference just really aren't thinking, all right? They're really not thinking. Watch this. You think you do a single spey that low? Okay, so the reason I did that was because there are differences between touch and go and sustained anchor casting, whether you believe it or not. One of the first ones is, if you think about it, a touch and go cast, as soon as you lift the line off the water, you've formed a pretty good amount of the energy that you're going to use to make your forward cast, because it stays. The anchor cut, you hit the anchor briefly, but the line stays. I hate to call it energized, but it stays alive. It doesn't go dead. It's up in the air. And all you do is you come forward, you add some energy on your forward stroke, but a good portion of your energy is in that line that's kept up off the water in the D-loop, right? Sustained anchor casting, when I throw the anchor, there's no energy, zero. We have to reform it all. This is why Skagit lines are slightly heavier, a little bit heavier for the same rod weight than, let's say, Scandi, because we need a heavier line right here in this section in order to develop momentum to pick up the line that's still in the water, all right? Does that make sense? You guys get that? Okay? The other thing is, And like I said, to me this makes a difference. Touch and go casting, you are picking the line up, the D-loop then descends, right? And this is a sustained anchor cast. Let me get this thing out. The D-loop rises out of the water. See that? Goes up. This is why sustained anchor casting, when you get back here, you don't poke up. You know, other styles, a lot of the other styles teach when you get back here, you poke up. You do that sustained anchor. If you're doing sustained anchor correctly, the second you poke up, you just blow your anchor, because it naturally rises with this out and around motion. Let's do it again. I want you to watch right back here. The D-loop, right here, naturally rises out of the water, up, right? And I'm going to do it. I'm not good at, just to show you that touch and go, I lift up, and then the line drops. See that? It drops into the D-loop. Big difference, people. Big difference. Big difference in how you should be thinking about your casting. Okay? Now where am I? Oh, so I wanted to go through the other casts to show you, because the double spey, the out and around, super obvious. I'm pretty sure you can see that line going out and then coming around. The other one that's actually pretty obvious, C-spey, I'm going to go out. One thing about C-spey is if you land the line, if you do a nice C, the line literally lands in the path you want to take the rod tip. Go out, follow the line. See that? Out, then around. The hard one is the parry poke, because everything's very concentrated. Here's the out. The out's this move. You see how the line's curled like that? It's curled slightly out and then around. That's the perfect positioning of a parry poke. I wish that we would have named it something different, because when I say poke, then people want to go, or they want to dump it. You actually want to try and lay it in a slight curve. There it is. Now, I'm going to go out. There's the out, around, back. Here we go. Up. And just let gravity drop the rod down. Now see how it forms that beautiful little curve. All right. And so, I should have done this first. I want to name the parts of the cast. It's after the fact, but here we go. Just like all the other casting styles, begins with a hang down. Hang down. Let's say you did the swing, fly comes all the way to the bottom. So what you do, strip in till you get tip. Advice number one. When you strip, get that rod tip down. Get here. Don't get on your cell phone and make a phone call at this point. If you got a sink tip on, it's going to go right to the bottom. When you're doing this, when you get ready to retrieve go your next cast, you need to have your plan formulated. You need to already know where you're going to cast, which direction, where, so that you can be cognizant of the fact that you get to the end of the head with the tip on the water. Now you have the entire rod movement to just pick up your line. No wasted motion there. Where people have problems, especially on the C-spey, I'll try to do this, is they're here. You just lost 3 feet of pickup. Ah, what a mess. 3 feet of pickup right here. Starting here, you've lost 3 feet of pickup. Not only that, see that L shape? That's slack. So now you're going to waste another 5 feet of pickup trying to straighten the slack up before you can effectively actually pick the line up, right? So anytime you get to the end, I want to cast over there. I know where I want to cast. Strip in. Like I said, especially with a sink tip, get to the end of the line, make your move. If you have that, see how easy that is, how little energy it takes to do that if you use the full rod. All right? So, that's with every one of the casts. Go back to the Perry poke. Have your plan already ready. I'm ready. Strip down. Pick up. Everything efficient. No hard power application. It's all smooth. The smoother you can go, the better you can cast, all right? The smoother you go, the better you cast, less energy it takes to cast. I think if you've ever been out with a guide and you're spey casting, no matter what style of spey casting you're doing, and your casting starts to go bad, okay, everybody, what does your guide say? Slow down. Slow down. Okay, and once again, watch. If you do everything, how slow this whole process can be. And especially sustained anchor casting, because I don't have to worry about keeping the line in the air, right? This type of casting, one of the things, sustained anchor casting, touch and go casting is timing. It's like single-handed casting. Go back, you better have the correct timing for when your line straightens out to come forward. Touch and go casting, go back, you got to have the correct timing for when that anchor hits, and then you got to go. Skagit casting is tempo casting. It's about the speed of all your movements. Because in Skagit casting, I can do this. 1, 2, 3, 4. Of course, if I'm in a rapid, that doesn't work, but I'm just making a point here, right? And some people are literally going to find this casting easier to do than other styles. I find this casting is for me. I'm a tempo kind of guy. I suck at timing. People throw balls at me, I get hit in the face, right? All right? But tempo as opposed to timing, I can adjust speed. I can be told, speed it up because the wind's bothering. All right, I'm going to speed it up. All right, or go slow. There's no wind. No hurry. So let's go slow and be relaxed about it. Same exact cast, but now I'm just going to take my time, except for that weed on there. Oh, look, there's an all bald eagle. Oh, got a cast. Okay. All right, anyways, just to this is where we're going here. Skagit casting was developed Skagit River with sinktips, lead-eye flies. That's what the motivating factor was. Somehow that turned into Skagit casting can only cast sinktips and lead-eye flies. Dude, really think about it. If you can cast a sink tip and a lead-eye fly, what would prevent you from casting a floating line which weighs nothing, all right? This here is an OPST Commando 375 grain line with, how long is the floating tip, Dave? 10 feet with a what? 10-foot poly leader? 10-foot poly leader. This is an entire Skagit system, what you call a Skagit system, except the poly leader comes from the Scandi crowd, right? And it's all floating. You can see the fly up on the surface out there. Works just fine. Maybe not quite as delicate as a lot of the Scandi guys, but it works. If you're fishing glass, maybe you better get yourself a Scandi outfit, but for most of us on the West Coast out there, this works just fine for skating summer steelhead. Once again, this is a full, except for that poly leader, this is a full-on Skagit Commando head, all floating. No problems, all right? So now, could you bring me the black, please? Okay. Now I notice one of the big things is to And I'm not trying to diss anybody, people, but unfortunately I have to clap back on some of this shit. Oh, sorry, didn't mean to say that. Clap back. That's probably the only young term I know. So, it's been a thing for I don't know why, to say that they can oh, the one I forgot to tell you. Dave did this. He's been telling me for quite a while, and unfortunately I'm an old guy, and the older you get, pretty much the more stubborn you get. And finally, Dave, actually we were on the river, finally got on the river together. I mean, he was there and I was there instead of through the computer or phone. And he showed me OPST commando line turned around so that the fine end, which is usually in back, because the commando is made to turn stuff over to it. So the thin taper's in back, the thick taper's in front, so it'll kick over a heavy sink tip. They've been taking them and turning them around, and basically, and then putting those tips on, those floating tips, and turning them into like a Scandi thing, but Dave calls them scamandos. So, but anyways, there's been some of the Scandi casters that have been using Skagit lines turned around. All I want to show you is Skagit. This is my rig for here on this river while I'm here. I will tell you that you saw that rig cast great. The one thing is, if I know I'm going to fish all floating line like the entire week, I will switch. This is a Scandi head. I'll switch to a Scandi head because I want the slightly longer head and I want the finer taper than a Skagit line, right? A little more delicate, but I don't have to change casting styles if I stay with a shorter Scandi. The rule back in the beginning, it was 3.5. The line should be 3.5 times the rod length or less. But I think for a floating line, what's more comfortable is 3. 3.5 is like the upper limit. That's as far as you can get before you start messing up. 3 times is really nice. This is a 33-foot head, a 13-foot rod, so it's, I should say, 2.5 to 3 times is the real comfortable ratio. This is a 13-foot rod. This is a 33-foot line. So it's less, it's in that 2.5, 2 3/4 times the length of the rod. And so the reason I choose it is because, yes, the Scandi tapers are more delicate than a Skagit taper. So, but you're going to see that Skagit line there, a little bit, it's not going to be as delicate as this, but the power, more speed in that outfit than this outfit. But this outfit with a Scandi head is going to be more delicate. So for throwing the typical smaller flies on this river, like I said, this is my personal outfit for this river. I am using a Scandi head because I want a little more delicate delivery, but I'm still going to stick with my casting. I think I just cast that split shot right off that thing. And to give you an idea of it still has power, is that yes, there was a split shot on it. Yep, it's gone. Okay, anyway. So, regardless. So I'm using a Scandi line, but I'm still using sustained anchor casts. Because you can see now the fly is kind of like floating down to the water instead of getting kicked over into the water as it was with that line, all right? Set, parry poke, sustained anchor cast. See how that went and floated down instead of getting slammed in or pushed into the water? Okay, that's enough of that. Questions? Anybody? Huh?
How long was the rod?
13 feet.
You're
Yeah, I'm right-handed. That's the other thing. You can, you hear people saying you should learn learn to cast with left hand. Just do whatever works for you. I don't switch hands. Oh, the stop? No, there is no stop. It's follow through. That's what I'm saying. You don't see me punching the cast. It's just a follow through. Just, okay. Yeah. All with that lower hand, just until when you're here, you naturally stop, right? You can't extend anymore. Just go like that. All right. And so at least with Skagit casting, I'm just totally left hand stupid. I'm all right hand, so I'm not going to switch hands. I will. Oh, you've already seen me doing it. See, I'm doing what they call cack hand. I maintain right hand, but do a cross-body cast. And there's nothing wrong with that. In fact, on some of these casts, my cross-handed wrong hand is actually a better cast than my right hand. So it's just figure out what works best for you. It's,
Yeah.